journalist. Osama Abuirshaid is the executive director and a board member of American Muslims for Palestine, and he joins us live now from Falls Church in Virginia. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. I want to get your thoughts on the latest developments happening within the last 24 hours, that attack in Beirut, and the prospects of this expanding into a wider war. Is Israel trying to get U.S. boots on the ground?
I'm not sure if they want to get U.S. boots on the ground, but definitely they want to get the U.S. more drawn into this conflict that they initiated. We know that the United States, or the USS Ford aircraft carrier, now is heading back home, coming back to the United States. It was positioned in the Eastern Mediterranean. That was as an implicit indication or an implicit decision by the United States that it wants to reduce the or to narrow the scope of the conflict in the region and send a message to Israel that it has to go to a third stage, which is less intensive attacks and strikes on Hamas, as opposed to this, as the U.S. calls it, the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza so far. So I think that Israel wants to keep the United States in the region, wants to ignite a wider war in the region where the U.S. will continue to be there to protect Israel while Israel achieve its objectives, mainly to evict Gaza, mainly to get rid of its nemesis in the region, in particular Hezbollah, and degrading the ability of Iran to continue to attack Israel or to threaten Israel.
Right, especially when Netanyahu has been criticized recently for not achieving much in almost 3 months now in its war on Gaza. If they do continue at this pace, with both domestic and international pressure mounting on Netanyahu and the U.S. for that matter, in the face of this humanitarian catastrophe that we're witnessing in Gaza, how much longer do you think that Netanyahu can continue indiscriminately bombing the Gaza Strip?
Well, he would rather, of course, to keep it with an open-ended. But now we have to take into consideration the internal dynamics here in the United States. We thought that Biden will force Netanyahu to bring this, or to slow down the attacks in Gaza by the end of December. Now it seems like it's going to go through January, and I guess Biden maybe feels safe to continue to support or to give this blank check to Netanyahu maybe until until March or April. Why? Because that's when we will start, when America will shift into the general elections mode. Now we're still in the primaries. The primaries, Biden is not facing a real challenge in the Democratic primaries. So the focus will be on the Republicans, not on the Democrats. So I think when we start shifting into the general election mode, that's when Biden will be more assertive, most likely, or likely will be assertive with Netanyahu. And I think Netanyahu thinks that he has until then to achieve his objective of, again, now they're talking publicly about evicting Gaza. Now they're not talking about a forced displacement, they're talking about a voluntarily displacement. Just leave Gaza, and they're trying to get countries to take migrants from Gaza, and by that they will achieve one of their main objectives, and not only to eliminate any so-called threat from Gaza, but also to have Israeli settlers live inside Gaza. So we've heard it from different Israeli ministers, mainly the Smotrich, who spoke openly about it. But again, this is proven to be very challenging and very difficult, because the resistance is still resilient in Gaza, still very effective in deterring and repelling whatever Israeli attacks. So Israel is, yes, inside Gaza, but it's unable to control and pacify Gaza so far.
Right, and the voluntary displacement that you mentioned also raises the question on whether or not Israel's sole aim here is to eradicate Hamas. And this is definitely a dark chapter for the U.S. in the history books, where many experts say that the U.S. is complicit in what they describe as a genocide. How is this going to backfire, or is it going to backfire on Biden in the long run? Because I'm hearing from the Muslim population in the U.S. that they're not going to be voting for him?
You know, it's not only the Muslims here. We're talking about minority groups. We're talking about younger Americans between the age of 18 to 35 who are displeased with his policy and his handling of the genocide in Gaza. So he's facing a real problem with the Democratic base. Uh, that will most likely will have consequences. At least at the minimum, Muslims, definitely the majority, overwhelming majority of them will not vote for Biden. And if the elections is as close as the polls suggest now, he will need the Muslim votes. He will need them in Michigan. He will need them in Arizona. He would need them in Georgia, and he would need them here in Virginia. By the way, Northern Virginia there's a big, large Muslim population in Northern Virginia, so he will need the Muslim vote at the minimum. But definitely, he will also need the progressives who are very upset, principally opposed to his politics, and as I said, the younger Americans are opposed to his politics when it comes to Gaza. So now he's facing a moral dilemma because this is a man who came into office promising to restore America's moral dilemma or to a moral authority.
Right.
Now there is no moral authority anymore, and when his administration is opposing the ICJ as opposed to supporting the ICC when it went after Putin, this shows the double standards and the hypocrisy in the American foreign policy.
Indeed. Osama Abuirshaid, thank you so much for being with us here on TRT World and sharing that analysis with us.